All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Will Morrison. I am a third-year law student, and this video is about outlining. So I believe that there are three different videos, this being one of them, that are being made about outlines, and this one is kind of about just general outlining process, and then the other two are about kind of more specific ways of outlining. But that is kind of a misnomer in a way. Everyone has their own different process for outlining. I like my process, so I'm just going to be explaining what that process is, but this is not kind of the end all be all is of like, okay, if you don't outline this way, you are going to fail. Yeah, adapt, figure out how you learn, how you like to organize information. But this is just the way that I've done things, and I've found it to be very helpful and also very efficient as far as time goes. And I think that can be kind of the biggest obstacle for people with outlining is that it can just take them a huge amount of time. And it gets to the point where it's like intimidating to start. Whereas, I mean, usually on average for me, it takes about, I don't know, probably half a day on average to put together an outline for a class. And depending on the class, sometimes it'll be longer. I've had a couple classes where it's taking, a day and a half. But for most classes, 4 to 5 hours can put together a pretty good outline. All right, so I'm going to do a screen share. So before we get to outlines, though, you need your building blocks. Without your building blocks, the outlining will not work. Okay, so you should be seeing now the screen that has Onenote on it. So Onenote is an amazing program that I wish that I had known about before, long before starting law school. Like when I was in my undergrad, I wish I would have known about it. And by the way, this is not an ad for Microsoft. I'm not getting paid by them. I have never been in contact with Bill Gates at any point in my life, although I hear he's a nice guy. So OneNote is a great program. If you have Microsoft Word, you probably have OneNote. If you can't find it on your computer, I mean, if you type OneNote, it should come up. If you can't find it, talk with BYU Help Desk. They, as a BYU law student, you do have access to the Microsoft Office suite. So you should be able to get a access to OneNote on your computer for free. And if for whatever reason you can't, honestly, it's worth the $100 to actually like buy the Microsoft Office suite because that's just how school and work is done. So I'll just kind of do like a quick walkthrough of OneNote, and like this will make sense once I kind of show my process for outlining, because I think the most important thing in putting together outlines is to have well put together notes that you can then transfer into an outline. It's so much harder and takes so much longer to make an outline if you have things in a bunch of different documents, if you have a bunch of different notebook papers and things like that. And I will say, I mean, some classes you do not have, you won't be able to use OneNote during class. A lot of professors say, okay, I don't want laptops in class. It still is very helpful to organize what information you have on OneNote, be that copying your notes onto OneNote or just still having the kind of information that I'll be showing you that I have. So quick walkthrough, you have kind of, general toolbar, kind of like what you would have in Word. But what I like about OneNote is just how easily it divides topics. So you have these different notebooks. I have a different notebook for each class. Within each notebook, you have these different tabs. As you can see here, I have a tab for every class. I have a tab for class notes and case briefs, and then sometimes I will have different tabs for different things. Sometimes I might consolidate those into other tabs. And then in each tab, you have all of these different pages. So for my class notes, I will do a different page for each subject that we talked about. So for criminal law, kind of our introduction, when we were talking about the purpose of punishment, I had a page for that. And then I made a different page for kind of each major unit that we would talk about. And, sometimes when you're in class, you might not be able to tell, oh, okay, here's where we're talking about a new topic. I'll make like a different, I'll make a different page for that. So you don't have to be super exact, but I find this very, very helpful in then translating things into an outline, because essentially each of these are going to be a different heading for your outline. Then I have a tab for case briefs. And in each, I start off, there's a page with kind of a template. Then whenever I start a new case brief, I'll do an add new page. I'll go back up to this template. Then I will just copy here and paste. And then I'll put in a little line and I'll say, you know, what the court is, Supreme Court of the United States, and then the year. I'll put the name of the case here, Jones versus Waldo. That's a law firm. I don't know why that came to my brain. Anyways, so this is actually, I think, the most important thing that I do studying. And I think it's something that people fall off the bandwagon for. I don't know. I think I know some people who kind of started off law school and they're like, okay, I'm going to brief every case. And then they fell off that bandwagon. I encourage you to not fall off that bandwagon because it is so helpful for so many reasons to have a brief for every case that you read in class. I make my case briefs very simple. As you can see, I don't have a whole lot of points here. Sometimes I'll be doing a case brief and I will just leave something. I'll just write a quick sentence. Sometimes I can't find the procedural history. That's fine. I'm not worried about having a super long and drawn out case brief. What I'm really doing is while I'm reading a case, I will be thinking, okay, what are the facts? How can I fill in this facts box? Okay, yeah, that's all I need to know. How can I fill in the procedure? In a way, I think that making case briefs helps me read faster because it keeps me more focused and it helps me highlight and find the things that I actually need in order to actually know what the case is saying. If I'm reading a case, if it's taking me a while, I might go up onto Quimby and look for kind of a guide of, okay, so this is what the actual facts were. But I like to have these case briefs. And so I guess it's kind of threefold as to why the case briefs are helpful to have. One is it helps me actually like learn. See this one, I mean, there wasn't even a rule because this was a cannibal case. So it's just like a mental exercise. And I left a bunch of things blank, it's fine. But so there are three reasons why I think it's really good to have case briefs. One is it helps your comprehension while you're reading. Two, when you're in class, it helps you when you're getting cold called. It helps you follow along with discussion because you have this record of, I don't know, I have this thing where I do a reading and then the next day, if someone asks me what was in the reading, I will not remember it all. But then if I look at my notes, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, now I remember. Yeah, it was this case, it was this case. It's really to jog your memory. And, you know, I like to put in a couple details that in case I'm cold called, maybe I don't know everything about the case, or not everything about the case is on here, but there's enough here to kind of jog my memory to make a couple points. And the third reason is it's very helpful in putting together your outlines and other study materials. So that's kind of my intro to OneNote and how I find that very helpful in putting together my outlines. Another thing that's very key that I do is, as you can see here, and I depending on like my class, I might change where I put this, but this is usually what I end up doing, is I take this case brief and then I condense it into 2 sentences. 2 very quick sentences where I just have one sentence, which is the facts that I need to know about the case of, okay, this was when there was, this is the case where there was a man who was found drunk in a parked car. And then here, a little bit of the reasoning with the rule. And sometimes this might be a little bit longer. Sometimes it might be shorter, but something to kind of jog my brain about the case. And this is also, I think, really helpful. One, it's helpful to do as a form of review. Usually during placement break, I'll kind of catch up on all my cases and do like a 2-sentence brief for each of the cases. And that will kind of remind me, oh yeah, we went through this case. That will keep my brain refreshed for going into the rest of the semester. And then at the end of the semester, it's good review to do the rest of the cases as well. And then I'll kind of show how I incorporate these into my outlines as well. One other thing that I guess I might as well show pretty quick is it's very easy to turn those into flashcards. So I like to use Quizlet. Again, not sponsored by Quizlet. I am not an academic influencer. If they wanted to send me money, I wouldn't be opposed. But so you go to Quizlet. I mean, there are other online study websites. I just use Quizlet. I find it easiest to use. But you can go to create, import something from Word, and then I can just copy this. And then between the term and definition, I make it a colon. And then look, here, I've made a flashcard. The term of it is the name of the case. And then the definition is the two-sentence thing I wrote. So I find this a really great way to review when I'm going into finals, to review the cases. Most professors don't care if you know the exact name of every case, or at the very least, they say that they don't care. But I think it's very good to have in your mind these cases that you can refer to when you're taking a final. If you can say, okay, this fact scenario is kind of like this case where this person did this thing. So I think that it should have X result. Or even better, if you could say, this case is kind of like, this fact scenario is kind of like case Y and kind of like case X. But I think it's more like case X than case Y because of ABC. Therefore, the result should be F. I ran out of letters there. And that's a really effective writing a final. And if a professor is kind of looking at, you have, two final answers, and they both came up with the same result, but one has a more detailed explanation where they're referring to cases, they're kind of showing each of their logical steps, they're making a compelling argument based off of what you've talked in class. That's going to be a lot more compelling and get a higher score than if you just say, this is what the rule is, this fits with this. It's kind of talking about those wrinkles and those nuances in the law that will distinguish you from doing a good job and doing a great job. All right, so now that we've talked about things that are not outlines, I will actually show an outline. I'll pull up my criminal law outline. Another thing, you should have well-organized folders on your computer. It is a very big time saver. Look at what I got here. Look what I got here. Okay, I go to documents. Then I have a folder for school. Then I have a folder for each semester. This is crim law, so this was 2019 winter for me. And then I have a folder for each class. It's beautiful. It's so easy. And then I can pull up here my crim law outline. So I will do, if it's a longer outline, this is kind of a longer outline for me, about 30 pages. My outlines tend to be usually like 15 to 20 pages. If it's a longer outline, and if it's something that covers a lot of different elements and tests, like with criminal law, I'll do a table of contents, which is pretty easy to do. I don't want to like explain that here. If you want to like look up how to do a quick table of contents based on headings, go for it. It'll make things a little bit easier to kind of flip through, especially if you aren't allowed to have like a digital copy of your outline up during the final. And then, so I mean, you guys have seen outlines before. Version of outlines where, okay, we have a larger heading concept, and then we'll talk about, okay, this was one aspect of this. Here's what the general rule is, and then here are some different kinds of. So my first point is pretty much always going to be the rule, and then if it's kind of more of a policy thing, I might talk about, okay, key considerations, key concepts, and then maybe I'll put in something about policy implications, and then I will put in, I'll have like kind of a case section where I will copy and paste all of those two sentence case outline, case briefs that I made beforehand. So I just have all of them here. And look, it's a pretty like condensed, compact thing. If it's something that's more of a more of kind of like, oh, here's what this like legal doctrinal rule is. I'll put if there are any exceptions. But really what you're doing is you're transferring your notes to a kind of simplified, easy to read version. You guys know this. You guys have seen outlines. But it doesn't need to be much more than that. And really, the basis of it is you're going to be taking good notes. That being said, it's not always that I can look at my notes and say, oh, okay, this will transfer perfectly into this. A lot of the time, what I will do is I will look at the syllabus. And I will see, okay, so what were our readings on? This is a long syllabus with a long intro. So this is like the second part of her like 3-part syllabus, but I'll see, okay, homicide. I should probably have a section about homicide. And I'll specifically have a section about intentional killings. Okay, homicide 2. Oh, I should have a section about voluntary manslaughter and a section about involuntary manslaughter and felony murder. And then that's what I did. So we have a here we have this big section here on homicide. If it's something, sometimes I'll put in tables. I can find that helpful, especially if you have a lot of kind of similar concepts like you do have in murder, where you have, okay, here's what the common law says, here's what the penal code says. Professor Bowen made like a graph like this that I found pretty helpful. There's another video about kind of more visual-based outlines, but sometimes you'll have a complicated text, and it can be very helpful to make some kind of visual chart for you. That's how I started to understand how like the rule against perpetuities works, is just like making a chart of taking the information that I have and, okay, this is what each of these things go through. With this particularly with homicide, I remember thinking, okay, I need like some quick sort of examples so I can associate each of these things with something more concrete. And then that'll kind of jog my memory of, okay, what's the point of this thing? So I wrote like a concrete example of what each of these kinds of murder would be. And then, yeah, I took each of the kinds of murder and I made like a little table with the common law definition and the model penal code definition, and then wrote cases that we talked about on it. So yeah, hopefully this is kind of more one of my more complicated outlines, because I felt like with crim law, there's just kind of a lot of rules to know. I'm going to pull up my constitutional law outline. Look, did you see how easy that was to find that? This is from a class I took 2 years ago. I found it in like 2 seconds, my outline. I'm so proud of myself. And honestly, this isn't a big thing. Most of you watching are probably like, what are you talking about? Of course I do this. But like, if you don't do it, you should do it. I'm just going to go off on like a little tangent right now. Sometimes I see people who have like a billion icons on their desktop and they save things directly to their desktop. What are they doing? I don't know. You know, and I'm just looking at this right here. Need Exemplify. I'm never going to use that again. I'm graduating and all of my finals are on Zoom. I'm just going to take that off. Look at how clean and pure and refined my desktop is. And you should be that way. I'm sorry, this is a bad tangent. Okay, but so for constitutional law, my outline was quite a bit shorter. It was only 18 pages as opposed to 31, because there were fewer concepts to talk about. But they were in some ways more complicated concepts. So let's get to justiciability. And a lot of my time in outlining is eventually devoted to, okay, is this a subsection of this other thing, or does it deserve like its own kind of heading? So that's kind of what I was with justiciability. I was saying, okay, should I have like a different subheading for each kind of justiciability requirement, or is it okay? And I just decided to put them all under the same heading, where I have, you know, a definition and then all the cases we talked about with it. Definition, all the cases we talked about it. And then, let's see here. Sometimes if we wanted to it a little bit more in depth, we talk about I would talk about exceptions, and here are some cases that illustrate those exceptions. And yeah, I find it very useful to do as well. I'll just kind of show how to do this really quickly. I'm sure this is also something that most people would know, but in case you don't, you can just do a Roman numeral and then a thing, gobbledygook. And then you can do hit enter and you get another line. But if you want to have it as like kind of a subheading, you just do tab. And then you want a subheading to that, you do tab again. What's that? You want another subheading, tab again. You can do tab. Look at, oh my gosh, so many, I never go that far. But you can do a lot of subheadings. And that for me, I find is a very easy way to organize information. So yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that would be useful to add or anything else that I do here. But yeah, this is just the way that I go through outlines. I take good notes, I make case briefs, I shorten those case briefs, and I then translate that, usually using kind of the syllabus as a guide, into a, 15 to 20 page document usually. Some people make really long outlines and find that helpful. I never find kind of enough useful information that I could fit into that outline. I have a friend who told me that her outlines end up being 100, 150 pages. I don't really get that. I did have one class, my 14th Amendment class, that we went very, very in depth with the cases that we talked about. So I decided to just put in as kind of an appendix my case briefs. And I'll just kind of show that here, my outline for 14th Amendment. So the actual doctrines that we talked about, there wasn't a whole lot. It just kind of ended up being like, 15 pages, the outline that I made. And then I had at the end, 20 pages of an appendix with all of my full briefs. And that was in part because in that class, we talked a lot about the dissents and the concurrences, and I wanted to be able to have that kind of written out in case there was a policy question. So there are ways that you can adapt your outlines to particular classes. I would say never feel as though you are like stuck to a specific model of how you need to outline things. I guess one other thing I will say is I'll talk about scheduling outlining, and I guess final studying in general. So hopefully, as I pull up my email here, I don't have anything too embarrassing in my inbox that you guys will make fun of me for. If you saw there for a split second, there was probably like an email from Dungeons and Dragons. Yes, I play Dungeons and Dragons because I'm super cool. So I like using Google Calendar. I find that very helpful. And I'll just kind of show here how I normally don't kind of plan out every exact hour. I usually end up being on kind of the same schedule for my studying, where it's, okay, how my semester is now is I have 3 classes on Mondays and Wednesdays and 2 classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And usually how it works out is, I'll go to my morning class and then I will do my reading for one of my classes in the morning and then reading for another class between my afternoon and my later afternoon class. And then I might, if it's been taking me a little bit longer to do readings, I will do another reading after that. So I do kind of all my readings before. And generally, if that's kind of all I'm doing, if all I have to do is keep up on reading assignments, I won't schedule out additional, more specific time, because usually that kind of time is more flexible than in other times. But when I am in, say, finals mode preparation, that's where, I guess I didn't plan out my hours quite as granularly, but this was also, I just planned out the whole day. I just did things kind of day by day. So when it gets to finals time, I do make more specific plans on my calendar. So let's see. Here's where I started. So this was last semester. This was the week before Thanksgiving, when I was like, okay, I want to have all of my outlines done before I head home for Thanksgiving, which was kind of the period right after we had our last classes. And, before we had kind of, I guess it was basically a week before our final started. So I set out these blocks of time and I said, okay, what are the things that I have to do in order to finish all my outlines? One is I want to make flashcards for all my cases. And that usually ends up being like a less involved process because it's just, I don't know, you're just kind of reading something, summarizing it, typing it down. You aren't doing this quite as much like spatial planning as you do with outlines. So I kind of set off that time. I wanted to do that first. And then I was a TA that last semester, so I had to make a PowerPoint. And then I said, okay, then I'm going to spend on the Friday. So I had to make an outline for antitrust, professional responsibility, admin law, and criminal procedure. Yeah, it was just those 4 classes. So I said, okay, afternoon of the Friday, I'm going to make my antitrust outline. Morning of the Saturday, I'll make my professional responsibility outline. And then afternoon of the Saturday, I'll make my admin law outline. And then on the Monday, I thought that my criminal procedures outline would take quite a bit longer. So I planned on doing that for the full day. I didn't end up sticking to the schedule exactly. I moved some things around a little bit. I ended up taking a bit longer on my professional responsibility outline than I thought I would. So I, ended up, how did the schedule end up working out? I think what it was is I ended up working a little bit on the Tuesday as well. And then I drove to Arizona like a little bit later and stayed with a friend in Las Vegas. But this is all it was. And after I had finished this, I was done with my outlining. So I know a lot of people get very anxious throughout the semester because, I don't know, I went all year perpetually was feeling, oh man, I got to get caught up on outlines. But like, there's a way to do outlines that doesn't involve you having to feel stressed throughout the whole semester. If you find a way to schedule your time, if you're that kind of person where you can work in such a way that you can make time to outline every week, that's great. Power to you. This has worked for me. But if you're someone who thinks that you will take a couple days for each outline for a class, which I don't really understand, but people work differently. People have different brains. Then you do want to plan out a little bit more ahead. When I'm doing my outlines, I don't feel as though I'm pressed for time. I like to give myself a bit of a time buffer. And I kind of, when I was planning this, I had in my mind of, okay, if worst case scenario, this does end up taking me more time. I didn't want to have to work when I was at home over Thanksgiving, but I could have. Let me see. Let me see my calendar from, I'm going to go way back in time here to December 2019 and see kind of how I had so this is how I had things scheduled out a year ago, which is, pretty similar, where I kind of dedicated, okay, I'm going to plan on having this. I kind of gave myself a little bit more time. I said, okay, I'm going to plan on having, spending this a day on BizOrgs, a day on 14th Amendment, have like this extra buffer time to finish 14th Amendment outlining. I gave myself all this time in the week to do evidence outlining. And so I kind of counted things out and I had in my mind of, okay, I'm going to plan on being done the Saturday before finals. That was Saturday before finals, right? Yeah, the Saturday before finals with all my outlines. And then I had planned, okay, I want to be done with my outlines by the Saturday before finals by 6 p.m. And I did that. I'm pretty sure I did. I don't remember, this was a while ago, but I'm pretty sure I did. But if I didn't, I would have had another, I could have gone until midnight. I would have had another 6 hours to finish up outlines, and that would have been fine. But what I really think is important is to, by the week of finals, have all of your outlines done, so then you can just do practice questions. And that's an incredibly helpful thing as far as studying goes. And you want to have your outline done for that because your outline is what's going to help you answer those practice questions. And even though I said I like to have my outlines finished before finals, when I'm doing those practice questions, sometimes I'll remember, oh, I should have something in my outline about that. I'll see, that in some way my outline is not adequate. So this has been a very long, very detailed presentation. If anyone has any questions, feel free to email me. My email, I'll just type it up here because we're still on screen share. I'll type it under abnormally dangerous activities, which is not what emailing me is. Feel free to send me an email. If you're watching this in like several years, I don't know if that's going to be a thing, but you could even reach me at this. So yeah, shoot me an email if you have any questions about studying or outlining, if you'd like me to walk through with anything. But it's really not as big of a deal as people make it out to be. I think people, about a lot of things in law school, they spend so much time stressing out about specific things that it's not worth stressing out. People like try to strategize, oh, what's the best way to make an outline? When like the best way is to make an outline. And the stress and planning that people put into it is a lot of the times more work than the actual making an outline. So thanks for watching, and have a good luck with finals and outlines and everything.